Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. We are now episode 53, so effectively we're a series two, episode one. We are into the second year, amazing. And to kind of kick off the second year of our Blockchain Gaming World podcast, we have actually the people who've been on the podcast the most often in season one. So we have Randy and Fazri from Lucid Sight. How's it going, guys?
Great, John.
Going good. Thanks for having us.
Good. Good. No, thanks for coming on again. So over the time we've spoken about various of your games. You've been pretty busy, and we're back to I think the first one we spoke about. So Crypto Space Commander, which you've been working on now for well over a year. It's really kind of gearing up. We've got lots of things to talk about, lots of detail, lots of headlines and stuff. But I guess to begin with, what's the elevator pitch for Crypto Space Commander?
Go ahead, Fozzie.
Sure. Crypto Space Commander is a space MMORPG, very similar to EVE Online is a good comparison, where users have command of a starship. They could explore our little corner of the galaxy, harvest resources, and very soon be able to craft, refine, build ships. And fundamentally, all these items are associated and stored on this Ethereum blockchain as NFTs or ERC20s. So this gives a player-owned economy. We like to call this a play-to-own game, where players are recouping something for the time they spend in the game. Think of it like playing World of Warcraft and earning that sword. Well, now that sword might have some value to you, either emotionally or tangibly, or may have value to another player, and we facilitate the transactions between them.
Probably for those who aren't familiar with EVE, it's worth kind of describing the game loop of EVE. You generally, have a spaceship that you buy. Maybe it's a cheaper spaceship, and you fly, explore, discover resources like iron and gold, platinum, and then you just discover crafting recipes, and you take apart ships, take apart technology, and you learn how to craft things. Like any sort of RPG crafting system, you learn how to put things together. The more you put them together, the better you become at crafting particular lasers and jets and cloaking devices. And this loop continues as you explore further and further out to the galaxy. So the resources like the iron and the gold, those are all ERC20s, and the ships and the lasers on the cloaking devices, those are all ERC 721s. If you get into the sort of crypto side of things.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so quite a bit to unpick there. Before we head into the crypto side of things, which we will get to, of course. So you've already name dropped EVE Online and World of Warcraft. So two pretty massively successful MMOs, incredibly deep. Had millions of players are still live. A decade after they've gone live. Now this is the kind of ambition we haven't really seen from blockchain games. So are you? Presumably, you are happy to kind of stack up against those incredibly successful, incredibly deep games.
Well, I would actually come at it the other way, John. I would say we are not. This is not. We did not enter this industry or this game to compete heads up with EVE Online. We are huge fans of EVE Online. EVE Online scratches a certain itch for certain types of game players. At this point, if you want to jump into EVE Online, it's an extremely deep game, as you said. It's very hard for a new player to jump in. What we set out, about 2 years ago when we really started working on this game, was which game on the entire universe do we love that would most benefit from blockchain as part of the game loop, right? Not just do I own an item in the game, but is there a game loop? EVE Online is a player-controlled economy. That's the essence. As you said, it's been around for 10 years. It's mostly driven by the players themselves. I mean, obviously, CCP is the custodian of the game, and they drop in the NPCs and keep the game interesting. But the players themselves have their guilds, their intrigue, their politics, and their economy. And that's where we said, well, what if we took a game like EVE, made a lighter version of it, because we knew we didn't have $100 million to build an EVE Online competitor, made a lighter version of it, but added real money essentially via Ethereum and true digital ownership as part of the game loop. How does that change the game? And the way we look at it is adding digital ownership. Play to own is our sort of tagline for all of our games. Adding play to own, you actually don't have to make a game that's heads up going to compete with EVE Online on graphics, on storyline, on basically $100 million budget, you can make a game that's quite a bit lighter, but is completely adding a new dimension of player owned economy. Uh, so we analogize it sometimes to the internet being added to Doom. Right? You have Doom, great game, first party, first person shooter. You add the internet to it, and it was kind of a hack at first, and that created Deathmatch, which all of a sudden was actually more popular and more fun than Doom, and that unleashed the entire first person shooter and Fortnite and all that stuff. So we look at blockchain very much as a feature in the game versus a all encompassing you know thing, right? It's something that makes a good game genre better.
which is pretty different to almost everything we've seen so far, which have kind of been. I mean, I guess we quickly get kind of bogged down into whether it's a blockchain game or a game that uses the blockchain, and whether those kind of terminologies are useful or not. But up to this point, we haven't seen many games offering. I mean, obviously you're not out live yet, but offering the kind of depth that you have, and having blockchain as part of that. So, how do you see kind of CSC fitting into that space? Because at the moment we have kind of CryptoKitty type things, successful but well understood, kind of more collectible sort of things, not too much gameplay. And now you're having something which is much more like a traditional game with this kind of true ownership kind of scenario pegged into it as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're much more in the later. I mean, we'll see where the consumer wants, right? We'll see what the consumer wants at the end of the day, and there's a place for the Crypto Kitty style games and the Axie Infinities. We're very much a game first that uses blockchain. And again, I kind of go back to the internet, right? The internet is a set of protocols like blockchain. The internet in of itself, saying an internet game is almost nonsensical at this point, right? You don't
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
like we said Eve Online, right? Eve Online was called Eve Online 15 years ago when it was created because you had to tell consumers this is an internet game because most games weren't internet games back then. Now almost all games are internet games, right? You don't say Fortnite online or you know World of Tanks online. It's kind of taken for granted, right? These are going to be online games. We see blockchain very similar. Again, we're all learning as we go. And John, you've we've been kind of, I think, saying consistently the same thing since the very beginning. But we very much believe blockchain's role in gaming is a super important unlocking feature of gaming features versus just this is all blockchain, right? This is all firing lasers using Ethereum transactions. We just don't think that's what the consumer. That's what we don't want to make that game. Again, people can make that game. That's just not what we're interested in. We want to make games first, where you can use the best qualities of blockchain, and we believe the best qualities of blockchain are true digital ownership for the items, and immutable economies, basically economies that the game developer has to really think through and create, and you can't go back and change all the rules of the economy after the fact.
As you kind of pointed out, this game's been in development in various stages for a long period of time. Certainly, I'm pretty sure now we are well over a year since the first pre-sale in which I bought an item, and now notice it's called a legacy item because things have moved on since in then. So without getting into too much depth, how was your kind of ambition and your kind of design of the game changed in that year?
Well, the game has changed quite a bit. Just real quick on your legacy item, it's still a good item. It just uses an older contract. You could actually on our website migrate that to our newer contract. That's all that legacy means. They're actually those initial ships are still extremely valuable to users and still have a lot of gameplay value. But the game has evolved quite a bit. As we've released various versions of our alpha, we released a mini game late last year, and then we had our actual alpha client starting in January of last year, and we've continued the development till now. We've seen a lot of improvements both visually and in depth and in gameplay. And what we're really seeing, and you can see this with our communities grown at an incredible rate. We have 5 guilds in the game. There's already political intrigue and deals, and some of our guilds have signed non-aggression pacts with each other and did them on blockchain for immutability. I think what the game really allows that we haven't seen yet is a depth of play and an openness of play that's really galvanizing users both ones that are interested in blockchain gaming, and some that are just interested in gaming in general. And blockchain is an incredible feature for it. But right now, if you were to look at CSC, we have a fully working MMO. You could have hundreds or thousands of players playing it uh, simultaneously, exploring for resources, harvesting, combating. There are user created tournaments, and we do events where we hide items and a giant galactic hide and seek. It's quite fun. We have a lot of levers to pull, and we have a lot of additional features that are coming out really soon.
Good. Okay, so let's kind of deal with perhaps the biggest issue that we've kicked around in the industry and kicked around kind of at conferences for the last year or so, which is onboarding people to blockchain games. And obviously, you've done various other games. You've kind of really kind of learned this experience, and to some degree, it's a game to game sort of evaluation on how you do this. But how are you thinking about getting people to play this game, which has blockchain elements, which can be an obstacle?
Well, actually, I think we're doing a great job of that right now. The current version of CSE requires no previous blockchain knowledge, doesn't even require you to have a wallet. You're able to onboard just by signing up for an account. You could buy your initial item or the game off Steam using Steam Bucks, using credit card, or using Ethereum if you'd like, and get in and start playing. You don't need to understand transactions. You don't need to do anything until you're ready for it. So you could collect items, find valuable loot, and then hop into our Discord and be like, hey, I found this item. Anyone want it? And someone will be like, whoa, yeah, I definitely want that. Can you put this on Ethereum? And then they kind of walk the user through it, or they could use our guides. The nice thing is the user's already kind of committed several hours of gameplay. They see the loop, they see the value before they even need to think about what a blockchain transaction is and how to function with it. Yet, for all the other users who do care about that, they could see these items being created, they could see them on the blockchain, they could see that economy working. And this is primarily due to our layer called Scarcity Engine that kind of mitigates all this problem for the game developer and for the user.
Yeah, John, I was on Twitter today, talking to somebody about they said, wow, Ethereum's going to be a real competitor to Steam. And we don't see it that way at all. We see Steam and iOS, Android. Those are distribution channels, right? Those are ways to get your game into the hands of millions of people. There's no sign that there's any slowdown in consumers liking their iPhone or their Nintendos or their PlayStations. There's no sign of that. I mean, I don't see that anywhere, uh, despite the sort of mantra of Ethereum and quite a lot of the blockchains is decentralize everything, right? It's a very much a um, they're very much a conflict with each other. The what consumers love with their you know devices and what the sort of calling of DeFi is. And we think that compatibility is actually we've hit the sweet spot with Scarcity Engine and with our approach in that we want to work on the current distribution channels. We want to be the way a billion people play games on traditional platforms. We don't think the iPhone's going anywhere. We think the iPhone will be beloved in 10 years. So we're better off as a company to actually work within the rules and regulations of the existing platforms and use the best feature of blockchain, which is quite honestly digital ownership, the ability to sell the stuff if you want, if you're kind of sick of playing the game. Or if you become really good at crafting a certain laser, you can make some money doing that.
Yeah, no, I think this is entirely the case where we kind of see there's these platforms that are generating billions of dollars of sales a year. Everyone's used to, everyone's got accounts, everyone knows what's going on with them, and then we see, to be fair, yeah, they're interesting projects trying to create kind of blockchain-based app stores and blockchain-based PC distribution models. They're interesting. I find them interesting. I play around with them, but literally, like, no one's using them. It's not not even like 1,000 people are using them. So if you want to run a commercial business, you have to kind of go where the people are, don't you? I guess there is kind of still this issue though about kind of the view of people like Valve who run Steam and Apple and Google. And obviously, people have deployed blockchain games certainly on mobile, although there's kind of tends to be a bit of a kind of issue. Kind of it's not as transparent as we would like in the blockchain space. So how do you kind of see that playing out? So I guess we're not seeing Ethereum in competition to Steam, but equally in terms of payment platforms, obviously Steam and Apple want to have their slice of revenue that's going through their platform, as any kind of business would.
Yeah. Okay. So that's again, it goes back to our scarcity engine approach. So based on our CSC game and our MLB Champions game, we have a layer that they're built on, and you can kind of think of it as a virtualization of Ethereum. It's a NoSQL games database. It's a regular, super fast database that runs, that is very, very stable. We can trust that if we have 10,000 people come into our game, that it's not going to crash. A lot of the layer two stuff is kind of like an untested buggy database on top of what Ethereum is. It's essentially a sort of untested buggy database, right? I mean, it's immutable. It has very awesome qualities uh, for trust, but as a developer, it's slow, right? You throw a transaction to Ethereum, you kind of hope it goes through. You got to, as a consumer, you got to make sure your gas is correct. And then there's, of course, every other blockchain has similar types of issues. What we've done with Scarcity Engine is said, hey, what happens if we just virtualize the Ethereum blockchain? Basically mimic it and let the consumer do all the stuff they would do at the speed of a traditional games database, at the scale and reliability of a traditional games database. And then at the point they want to do all the blockchain stuff, it's an option, right? It's an option. We can't stop them. It's totally in their control. So in our MLB Champions game, it's actually pretty straightforward. Like, you play the game, and if you want to mint something, there's a mint button on the website, and you hit mint. And at the point you hit mint, you can go sell it on OpenSea or wherever you want to sell it, or trade it, or do all the sort of authentic quote unquote blockchain stuff. Now, if you never want to do that, you never have to. And that gives the consumer the choice of how they want to play these games. Do they want to do everything via MetaMask? We let them. We're totally cool with that. Do they want to just not deal with that because it's too much trouble, or maybe they're new to crypto or whatever? Then we have a very gentle experience for them. So we feel like that's our approach to this, and that's what we'll be extending to our two games and more games in the future.
Yeah, blockchain heresy, some people will call this, but yeah, I agree with you. I do think it's kind of interesting. You're not the only company who are kind of doing this. This is kind of, I guess, in the blockchain game space. I see that there's the kind of crypto blockchain enthusiasts who have kind of bootstrapped themselves and haven't come from a traditional software, certainly not a traditional games background, and they're much more, I guess, purists about how they want to do something. And then obviously guys like you have been around in software and games for a long period of time, a bit more pragmatic about, you want to have a business. You don't want to be the pioneers who starve because you were purist. And
Yeah, and also I want to throw something out there that we are very much ear to the ground to our customers. I mean, one thing about actually putting out games, we're not writing Medium articles, and pontificating about, from ivory towers, what we think the future is going to look like in 20 years of consumer entertainment. We're putting out product. We're getting feedback from the players. Our players right now, our core base, are all super crypto enthusiasts. I mean, we haven't crossed over mainstream. We're not claiming to have done that. We have a super authentically crypto base doing this. If you look at, we're one of the top selling things on CSC is consistently one of the top traded things on OpenSea. We're great partners with OpenSea. So it's the question. Yes, there are sort of a lot of the blockchain, vocal, very loud vocal people who have a view of how things are going to be. But then you look at the actual, people who play these games, and the people who spend money and are actually taking the time to do the stuff. A lot of them like our approach. Uh, in fact, I think we've actually brought over a lot of Bitcoin maximalists who were kind of like, they didn't buy into the whole Ethereum, everything decentralized, but they love digital ownership as a concept. So they like actually the idea that it's a game first with blockchain as a feature. Basically, we're taking the best of blockchain. We think.
Yeah, and I think you'll appeal to that. I mean, the type of game it is, it's a fairly deep resource kind of management game. Obviously, that appeals to in a similar way. And I think there's an interesting comparison. It's not you wouldn't make it as a direct comparison, but obviously in the free to play mobile world, there's like 3% probably of people playing a game actually spend any money at all. And there's been an interesting comparison by other developers who are doing a similar kind of hybridized approach to you, who say they kind of expect in the early days that kind of percentage, 3 to 5% of their games that they want to go into the mass market will probably use the blockchain. Will probably have take control of a wallet, have their own private keys, which no one knows yet because no one's produced a game at that scale. But that seems to be a good starting comparison. We will see. So in terms of kind of where you are now, you're in alpha. You've got I was looking at your trading on OpenSea, which is the big NFT trading platform. So you're number 5 at the moment in terms of volume, 7-day volume, pretty good. Almost 48,000 assets out there, 500 NFT owners. So that's good. You've got your kind of core community. What happens next? How do you cross over? How are you the first blockchain game that actually gets more than 5,000 players?
Well, this comes to this. Our roadmap is actually coming on us pretty quickly here in August. We at the end of this month we will be launching CSC. Well, it'll be launching on Steam sometime in the next few weeks as a download where you can again buy the ships and stuff with Steam bucks, even if you don't have a MetaMask account or anything or MetaMask wallet. But the big thing is, at the end of the month, we're doing an event with Star Trek. So there's a convergence event. Fosri was just speaking at Star Trek Las Vegas, the giant convention there, where all the famous stars of Star Trek get up on stage. Fosri was one in rare air. So he's still walking on clouds from that event. And we're very lucky to have this great event where there's going to be a crossover, and we're going to be selling the Enterprise and several other of the iconic ships in our game via ETH and via US dollars. We suspect the whales will spend via ETH, and they're going to buy the ships, via auction. We're going to obviously auction off the first Enterprise and some of the higher ticket items, and then the other ones we're going to sell via module crates. Where you're gonna have a chance to get anything from a ship to a cloaking device. I don't know if you're a fan of Star Trek, but there's phasers and there's a certain canon of different technology in Star Trek that will basically be selling to be used in our game. So it's kind of consistent with our strategy as a company is to distribute on platforms people love, mainstream consumers love, i.e. Steam. Partner with brands with affinity, i.e. Star Trek. And we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, at the end of this month, this game is getting millions of users who are playing. Maybe some don't even know it's a blockchain game, right? At first, and then they kind of discover how true digital ownership, how play to own changes the game. Because again, Eve's a kind of game where you spend a lot of time. People spend hours and hours and thousands of hours playing this game and thousands of dollars, and then they end up selling their stuff on these gray markets. You know what I mean? Like if you want to sell your spaceship in Eve, you're essentially selling a username and login. It's something the developer can shut down. It's something that you could get screwed over on the transaction because it's a gray market. This is basically putting ownership as a first principle in the game. I mean, that's very, if you want to kind of sum it up, what we're using blockchain for is we're saying digital ownership's our first principle. And that's never been done in a mainstream platform, on a mainstream way before. And so we're excited to see how it goes with again, Star Trek being, one of our favorite brands.
Yeah. No, I think it is interesting that as you say, people who do play these very deep games, they do, and quite how much they understand the legalities of, do they own their accounts and do they own their items in their accounts? Obviously, there are ways in which they can go off and sell them, which are illegal, but developers often can't be bothered, or it's very hard to police. So I do think it is. I think at the moment, some people in the blockchain space say, well, this is going to be like a major kind of I don't know, conversion of all these gamers who are going to suddenly realise that they're going to throw off the shackles of this terrible system they've had for the last 10 years and realise they could own these things properly and go and sell them. I don't think they actually realise at the moment the situations. I think that will actually take probably quite a long time to come through. I think, as you say, people might even know they're playing a blockchain game, might understand what that means, but they know they can go and sell their items, and then if they do that, they'll tell their mates about it, and it will be this kind of slow migration. I guess the stuff like the Star Trek stuff might speed that up a little bit. It will be certainly interesting if people sell Formula One cars for $100,000. This sort of enterprise, you would kind of hope might be a equivalent sort of price, wouldn't you?
Of course, but here's the funny thing about it though, John, is like, look, say we sell the say the Enterprise sells for like 200 grand, right? Wow, like that would be amazing. Like we would obviously get lots of press. You guys write an article, like we'd tout it. That does not make a great game or a sustainable gaming community, right? I mean, what you get there, I think the valuable thing you get there is you get somebody who's a major advocate of your game, right? So we have we have a player. He's pretty well known in the game space. His name's Coco. In the blockchain game space, you probably heard of Coco, right? He's the biggest whale in our game. He's a big whale in Axie Infinity too. He's the head of one of our guilds, right? He's a major community leader. This is what you get is this sort of like this term thousand true fans. The blockchain people are there are like the people who have been with this game since the beginning, who bought ships in that those Gen 1 ships before when the game was just a twinkle in Fosri's eye. Those are our biggest community leaders even to this day, and that's really when you launch an MMO, getting 100 players to play your game at the same time is the hardest part. Getting like right now, if you go on DLive, I don't know if you're familiar with DLive, the streaming service that kind of has a crypto bent to it. It's competitor to Twitch. Any given day, you'll have 5 streamers of CSC, right? And they're all people who bought our stuff or are being encouraged by the early owners of our assets. So it's a very kind of interesting. We're all learning. It's really this has only been like year 2 of all this, right? It feels like 100 years, but it's only year 2, and I think the biggest thing we're getting from it is that one. Yes, way we're describing things sounds like heresy to certain people, but those aren't really gamers or people who are playing these games. The people that sounds like heresy to, truthfully, they're not even gamers. People who are gamers like our approach. They're crypto whales. They like playing our game. They like the digital ownership aspect of our game, and they're the biggest community advocates for things that are like streaming. Which, guess what? We're all going to need streamers if this is going to go mainstream, right? I mean, it's not like because it's crypto, it's not like we can get away from all the traditional ways people discover gaming.
No, and I do think that is one of the kind of the big issues with the blockchain space in general across all kind of categories of product. But the game space, that's what kind of we know is they do sort of think that they just have to put out this thing that is truly decentralized or decentralized in some way, or has this kind of like you can earn money from doing it, and everyone will just drop everything they're doing. They stop playing Fortnite and suddenly come over to this kind of badly designed role-playing game or something that looks rubbish. I mean, there does seem to be this kind of it is because it's crypto, they will come sort of mentality, and you have to go, doesn't matter what the price of Bitcoin is, people are really happy playing Fortnite or playing whatever it is on their consoles. You have to build it has to be a good game.
It has to be a good game, and I think that is the sort of absolutely. And I think what you said there is the thing that bothers me most in the blockchain space is this concept, like you just described, that you're going to have things like game crossovers that aren't designed, right? Like you're just all of a sudden going to have an NFT from one game just going to all of a sudden start working in another game. It's going to work well. You look at like traditional games like traditional IP based games like the Nintendo franchises. When they put Super Mario in the same game as Zelda, like Smash Brothers, it's designed, right? I mean, you got game makers thinking through and game designers. We have a full-time game designer here. His name's Steve. He all he does all day is spreadsheets thinking about how the game economies are going to work. And to the idea that you're going to sort of just because it's blockchain get away from all that, that's ludicrous to me.
No, absolutely. And in terms of kind of you're going into, I guess you're going to be early access is kind of more of a kind of a beta type thing, or these things are kind of quite loose terms. After that point, do you have kind of a firm release date, or is that very dependent on how things go?
Once we enter early access, we're going to have a public roadmap, and there's features that we're probably going to be releasing over the next few months. Once the game's ready and in a stable place, pretty much once it's in early access, there's persistence already available in Ore. The game is live effectively, and as most games, features get added. There's improvements that'll happen. Once it comes to a stable place where we feel we're feature complete, then we'll release it. And we're hoping a few months after early access. We're not looking to go on much longer than that before it's generally available.
That's bookmarked our next podcast then. Towards the end of the year, we can catch up again and see how much of the vision has materialized and how much is still kind of yet to go. Obviously, a balance between the two. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure as ever. Your enthusiasm for the space is never ending.
Great, John. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
In terms of people kind of getting hold of you, what's the easiest thing to do? Obviously, I shall put all the website stuff in all the links in the show notes. But if they want to get hold of you specifically, where they find you on Twitter? Or
I mean, best way is, again, join our CSC Discord channel. You can find a link at csc-game.com. I'm in there pretty much all the time. You can @ me, shoot me a DM. Happy to chat when about CSC or anything else.
lovely.
Yeah, I mean, and, I would encourage people to go watch people stream on DLive. I mean, it's the way people, like, non-blockchain people, discover games. I don't see any reason it's going to change. And you can go watch people stream. These aren't employees of our company. These are just fans of the game, and they're streaming for 3-4 hours a day. So worth checking out.
Can't get better than that, can you?
So go to DLive and just look for CSC.
Good. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, guys, for your time. Thank you for listeners for listening. If you want to get hold of me, I am a blockchain GMG on Twitter. Be great. Any comments you've got? Always good to kind of have my own little community, I suppose. Not quite as impressive as the CSC one, but always good to get comments. But thanks for listening to this one. Come back next week to find out what's going on in the world of blockchain games.